You call your dog, and for a moment they hesitate, just a second longer than usual, not enough to alarm you, but enough that something feels slightly off. That hesitation didn't suddenly appear out of nowhere, it has been forming quietly in the background through repeated interactions you barely noticed. Most owners don't catch it when it begins, because it doesn't look like a problem yet. But this is exactly where the shift starts, long before a dog stops listening completely. At first, it seems like distraction, something easy to dismiss as tiredness or curiosity about something else nearby. But what you're actually seeing is a change in how your dog evaluates your importance in that moment. When that evaluation begins to shift, the response is no longer automatic. And once that happens, the pattern doesn't correct itself without change. Dogs don't suddenly decide to stop listening. Instead, they gradually stop prioritizing you as the most important signal in their environment. That shift always follows a sequence, even if it's subtle and easy to miss at the beginning. What looks like independence is often just a response to inconsistency. And most of the time, that inconsistency comes from small mistakes repeated over time. The first mistake is inconsistency, where rules seem to change depending on the situation or your mood. One day something matters, and the next day it doesn't, which forces your dog to reinterpret what your signals actually mean. Dogs don't get confused in the way people think, they adapt. And when signals aren't reliable, they stop treating them as priority. What appears as a dog becoming independent is often just uncertainty forming beneath the surface. Your dog starts making more of their own decisions because your direction doesn't feel predictable anymore. Instead of responding immediately, they pause to assess whether it matters. That pause is the earliest visible sign that responsiveness is weakening. The second mistake is repeating commands, which feels harmless but changes everything over time. You say something once, nothing happens, so you repeat it again, and then again until the dog responds. What your dog learns from this is not the command itself, but the timing of when it becomes important. And very quickly, the first command loses all meaning. From your perspective, you're trying to get compliance, but from your dog's perspective, you've created a delay system. They learn they don't need to respond immediately because the real command hasn't come yet. That delay becomes part of their behavior pattern. And over time, it turns into selective listening. This is usually the stage where owners start noticing something is different. Commands take longer, responses feel inconsistent, and the dog seems to decide when to engage. It feels like stubbornness, but it isn't. It's a learned response to inconsistent communication. The third mistake is emotional inconsistency, where your tone changes depending on your mood rather than the situation. Sometimes you're calm, sometimes frustrated, and sometimes urgent, even when the command is the same. Dogs don't just hear words, they read emotional signals with precision. And when those signals shift unpredictably, clarity disappears. When clarity disappears, hesitation replaces it, because the dog is no longer sure what version of you they are responding to. That hesitation is not defiance, it's evaluation. Your dog is trying to understand what this moment means based on past patterns. And if those patterns are unstable, the response becomes delayed. Watch closely in familiar environments, where nothing else has changed. The same command, the same setting, but a different response from your dog. This isn't random behavior, it's a recalculation. Your dog is reassessing how much weight your signal carries. Once that reassessment begins, it doesn't stay isolated. It spreads into other commands, other situations, and eventually your overall influence. This is why the shift feels bigger than just one behavior. It becomes a change in how your dog relates to you. The fourth mistake is reacting too late, where small signals are ignored until the behavior becomes noticeable. Then suddenly, the response becomes stronger or more emotional. From your perspective, it feels justified. But from your dog's perspective, it feels unpredictable. Nothing changed gradually from their point of view, everything changed all at once. That creates uncertainty about your reactions. And uncertainty weakens trust faster than anything else. The fifth mistake is lack of follow-through, where commands are given but not consistently completed. Sometimes the dog follows through, and sometimes they don't, without consequence or correction. Over time, this teaches your dog that completion is optional. And optional behaviors are rarely prioritized. Commands only have meaning when they lead to consistent outcomes. Without that consistency, they become suggestions rather than instructions. And suggestions are easy to ignore when something more interesting is available. At this point, many owners describe their dog as stubborn or selective. But those labels don't explain what actually happened. The behavior is a response to a system that lost structure. And the dog simply adapted to that system. The sixth mistake is poor timing with rewards, where reinforcement comes too late or without clear connection to behavior. Instead of strengthening the right action, it blurs the sequence of cause and effect. Your dog begins to experiment rather than respond. And experimentation always slows obedience. From the outside, this looks inconsistent, but internally it is very structured. Your dog is testing what works because the system no longer feels clear. And when that happens, hesitation increases naturally. The seventh mistake is ignoring small delays, which seem harmless in the moment. That slight pause before responding, that brief glance away, or that tiny shift in focus. These are not random behaviors. They are early indicators of disengagement. Those small delays are always the beginning of a larger pattern. Once they become normal, longer delays follow. And eventually, responses become selective or disappear entirely in certain situations. When it reaches that stage, it feels like the behavior changed suddenly. But in reality, the change has been building quietly for a long time. It was just too subtle to notice at the start. Dogs don't stop listening because they don't care. They stop listening because your signals lost consistency and clarity over time. And when that happens, they begin to rely on their own judgment instead. That's why the change feels deeper than behavior, it feels like a shift in connection. Because it is. But the same process that created the problem can also reverse it. Once you recognize where the shift began, the entire pattern becomes visible. And when your signals become clear, consistent, and reliable again, your dog responds differently. Not because they were forced to, but because your direction makes sense again.